Hola, 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 and welcome to the 7th episode of the Amiga Mía Talk Show Season 3. This time it's a special occasion because we have a Uruguayan-Australian author called Natalia Figueroa Barroso. I remember when I was scrolling through your social media because I was just learning more and more about your story as we collaborate on that content about Hailstones Fell Without Rain. And then I was scrolling through your socials and I started to find these videos of you like dancing with mate on the treadmill. I was like, this is fun. This is like a fun side of you.
Yeah, because I try to do that because I'm like, oh my God, all I post is politics or books. And I'm like, they have to know that I'm also fun.
Yeah.
My friends, if you meet my friends, you're like, what? Why are they your friends? My friends are so cool. I am like the nerd and so I just wanted to show that little fun side of me so people can relate and know that just because you're into politics and books does not mean that you can't dance, that you can't, have a good laugh, that you can't just relax and be silly as well and enjoy the just little things in life. So
yeah, and I like that because it's more than just one. Like there's quite a few videos where you kind of show that side of you, and it's really nice to see.
Yeah,
it's really nice to see. But still, by far, my favorite is the matecito. The treadmill.
And I'm like, don't do this at home unless you're charrua.
And just before the show, I was practicing the R sound, wasn't it, Natalia?
Yes.
Because the way you say it is so eloquent. Like it was just for me, I feel like
That's because I had to practice all my life. And to practice that in Uruguay, and I'm probably going to stuff it up now, in Uruguay we say the word ferrocarril.
Wait, what now?
Ferrocarril.
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 Oh, wow.
It's really hard. So like when I was in year one, I remember the teacher saying, okay, to practice your R's, your double R's, just practice the word ferrocarril. And so we just kept saying that, ferrocarril.
That's actually a really good tip. Ferrocarril, ferrocarril, ferrocarril. It's like you can turn it into a little bit of a
song, yeah. Yeah, so there we go. And so that's how I practice in year one, because when I would introduce myself. I don't know if you know this, but in Uruguay, the teachers, we call them by their first name. So my teacher's name was Lucia, and they call us by our surnames. And so I used to practice. I used to hear them say, Figueroa Barroso, and then I'm like, oh.
Wait, hold on. You would call the teacher by
first name?
First name?
Yeah.
I feel like I would get like a if I did that.
No. That's how it is in Uruguay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Actually, let's talk about that because I'm really intrigued by, I guess, your early years.
Yeah.
Because it kind of shapes a lot of your story and the debut. So Uruguayan-Australian with Charrua descent, Charrua descent. So the Charrua are an indigenous group in Uruguay.
Yeah.
So you might have seen on my socials, there's been, Natalia's been working on a book for a year now, would you say?
More than a year. So I started, the first draft, I started in February 2022. But yeah, it's, I think I sent it to printer early this month. No, we're in July, last month.
Yeah, because I remember we started talking about this months ago, hey? And then you were like, I'm going to lock myself in a room and never come back out because I need to finish this.
I was over it. I was like, oh my God, I need to get this done. I got to get it done, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover reveal, which we'll get to and celebrate the Uruguayan artist. So Hailstones Fell Without Rain, your debut novel. And I guess what was really, really important for me is celebrating you because it is the first Spanglish book or novel to debut in Australia. And also because just part of the Latin diaspora, also that it's, partly in Uruguay, but also partly in Western Sydney. And we have one of the largest and oldest Latin diasporas in Western Sydney. I'm so honoured and proud to talk to you about it and to be able to help you showcase this novel because not only are you painting such an important picture of your history and your family, but also for the Latin diaspora, a beautiful piece of legacy. Natalia, if you want to just tell a little bit about yourself, who you are, and then maybe we can start talking about, your younger self in Uruguay.
Yeah. I'm a Uruguayan-Australian author from Western Sydney. I grew up in Fairfield in particular, and I did have that complex migration story where my parents kept wanting to go back. So I did do the first early years of school in Uruguay. So that's why I feel like Spanglish is my language because I didn't speak English until I was about 9.
Okay.
Even though I was born here. And when I did start speaking it, straight away what I did was start mixing it, because it just made it easier whenever I forgot a word to utilise all my languages.
Born in Australia and in the Western Sydney area, so you would have been very connected to the Latin diaspora.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, I've mentioned this to you before, but especially with the Chilean diaspora, because they're very big in Western Sydney. And in my family, my mother, her best friends are Chilean. My best friends are Chilean. And I grew up in that diaspora as well. So we obviously had the Uruguayan community, but the Chilean community was very big on part of my identity, because I grew up alongside them, and there was a point in my life where people were confused with my Spanish. They're like, what are you? Because I would say mantequilla and I would say poto. And they're like, aren't you Uruguayan?
Wait.
Don't you eat pollo en la playa? And I'm like, yes.
So for those who don't know what poto is, what's poto?
Culo.
That's right. In Chile, we say that. But that's why there's also that the ongoing debate about the, ¿cómo se llama? El sana. In Chile se dice sana potito de rana.
Yeah.
And people are like, what do you mean potito? It's colita or culito. I know some people say sana culito de rana también.
We say culito, yeah.
There you go.
But I knew poto. Yeah, so I knew all the Chilean slang. I grew up with it. And it got really confusing at times. So like, my stepmother is Chilean. And for example, I don't know if you know this, but Chileans, when they say luego, means now, but Uruguayans is later. Right. And so my stepmom, she would say, quiero que laven la loza luego. And we'll be like, oh, all right. And we'll just sit down. And she's like, atrevidas and all this stuff, like telling us off because we are not doing it now. And so I started to learn all these differences between the dialects, which I love because I love language.
So I guess going back to your upbringing, so you were born in Australia and then you went back to Uruguay. I guess what was that like going to the schooling system in Uruguay? Was there anything there that was like a highlight or something that's really resonated with you until now?
I loved that it was only 4 hours.
What?
Yes. So when I came here, I used to ask my mum, please fast forward the clock because time does not pass in Australia. It's so slow because it was 6 hours.
Yeah.
And for someone small, you know how when you're young, everything feels like it's much longer. Like a year feels like a long time, and then the older you get, a year just flies like that. So for me, 6 hour schools in Australia was really difficult to get used to. But yeah, I really enjoyed that it was 4 hours. We used to get our milk, so we got fed in school, so that was really nice. And I just love that we would call our teachers by their first name, so it just broke that barrier, as in like your authority and we're the student. They gave us importance by saying our surnames and saying this is who you are, this is your mob, this is where you come from. So yeah, I enjoyed that about Uruguay. And then in Australia, what I enjoyed is the diversity. Like I had never met someone like from Vietnam, and in Fairfield it was full of the Vietnamese community. So I'm learning all these different cultures, which I did not get to experience in Uruguay. In Uruguay, everyone's Uruguayan, and then you'll get like the rare exception where you'll have another Latino, like someone from Venezuela or something like that. So yeah, it was really interesting to learn about other cultures and the way they eat, the way their religion, and all their customs, which I love about Australia.
And then, so you're back in Australia, and how did you navigate the languages at that point?
So for the first nearly a year, for the first 10 months, I was a selective mute. So I, on purpose, chose not to speak because I wanted to go back. So it was my first protest. If you follow me on my socials, you know that I attend protests. So it was my first protest. And the reason why I eavesdropped on my parents arguing at night, saying, well, if Natalia doesn't start speaking, we're going to have to go back. And so that was like, a little light bulb moment. I'm like, I'm not going to speak because we're going to go back. And so it was 10 months of me not speaking. My mum ended up taking me to a speech pathologist, a psychologist. The teachers had like this thing that one of them was going to make me talk. So they would like do different ways, like try to tempt me with stickers and stuff to say hello. And yeah, like, so at first it was like that. I was just not speaking, but I was listening. And that's how I started writing as well. One of my teachers gave me a diary, and I just started writing, first in Spanish, and then slowly as I picked up English words, I wrote them phonetically in Spanish, but I was trying to write English, and I've got this diary, and I would just try to insert these English words into my stories. And then one day I just put up my hand and I said that I wanted to do show and tell, and I told them that it was my sister's birthday, and everyone was like, she can speak. Like, I was just, all of a sudden I could speak.
And does your sister play a big role in your life?
She does. I always say to her that she's not someone that likes to read though, but if she were to read my novel or any of my stories, she doesn't need an explanation for the metaphors. She knows where they come from. She knows what they mean. Like, she knows why I would use a certain symbolism or certain, themes. And because she knows me. Yeah, because we grew up together and we have the same parents, the same stories behind us. So.
And I recall when we were sort of working together on the article that's on the Amiga Mía website, and there was a picture of young Natalia, Western Sydney. Was it your quinceañera? Yeah. What was that experience like?
Yeah.
Because I know there was a family member of yours who you kept highlighting and said it played a very important role.
Yeah. So my quinces, I broke the rule. I didn't wear white, and my abuela thought I wasn't a virgin. She actually took me aside and she's like, it's okay, you can tell.
Love abuelas for that.
And I'm like, no, I just want to wear blue. But yeah, no, it was in Stocklands in the hall, Wetherill Park Hall, the community centre, and I had all my grandparents. I was very lucky. I had all my grandparents there, so that was great. I've always been very, very close to my grandparents. I lived with all four of them throughout my life, and both my paternal and maternal grandparents are very important to me. But my paternal grandfather, what drew me most to him was that he was very quiet, and he wasn't a person who spoke much to other people, but he somehow opened up to me. My dad said that he never picked up any of newborns because he was a big man, and he was so scared that they're like so fragile, he's going to break them. He has like these huge hands. He had these huge hands. But he picked me up, and he actually looked after me as a newborn. Like, my mum went out to the Uruguayan club with my dad, and he looked after me, and that was like a first. They're like, so we had that connection since I was born. But yeah, so he was there, and I'm so privileged that all my grandparents were at my quinces. Yeah.
And what does it mean? I guess for those who don't know what a quinceañera is, like, what is it, and what's the significance in the Latin American culture?
So it's meant to be like when you come into womanhood. And I've read somewhere that it's actually got Indigenous roots, that apparently it was a tradition that we used in several different Indigenous communities, that when you turn of a certain age, like for example in the Charrua history tradition, when a woman got her first period, they used to draw 3 lines, blue lines, to represent the 3 rivers, and being you are now part of that river. So it's a celebration. Yeah, so it's just a celebration of coming to womanhood. But I guess it's just a big party. Latinos like to party.
Yeah, and I love that you still had it, like you still kept that tradition.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. It feels like, would you say that's a common theme in your life, where you retain a lot of the Latin American culture or the Uruguayan culture?
Yeah. Yeah. I always wanted to go back home, and if I couldn't go back home, I wanted to bring home here. My sister didn't celebrate her quinces. She instead renovated her bedroom.
Each their own.
I had a quince party. I was like, yeah, I want a party. But it was really cool because I was the only one in high school that did their quinceañera. And that's it. Like, I had other Latina friends that turned 15 the same year as me, but they didn't do it. I was the only one. And it was really, really awesome because I was like, I guess we all ended up getting to participate in our culture vicariously through me. So like I had like my Argentinian best friends, the twins, they came and they were turning 15 then. So they got to celebrate and do that quince as well through me.
And talking about, I guess, like, your upbringing and being in Western Sydney, Because I would imagine you would have Latina friends, but then you would also have like a lot of multicultural friends as well. What was that experience like?
Yeah. Well, I loved it. So there's a lot of things that I learned that you could only learn in Western Sydney. So like, for example, one of my friends, in our group we had a Turkish friend, a Lebanese, an Assyrian. There's a lot of Assyrian community, Cambodian, Vietnamese, and then we had the Latino girls. Because I lived in Western Sydney, I learned that in the Turkish community, you call your older sister. So abla is the word. So one of my best friends, she used to call her sister abla, and her younger sister used to call her abla. But then she would call her younger sister by her name, and I was like, what's going on there? And then she explained that to me, and I was like, oh, so these are things that you only learn if you're, friends with people and you start to, connect and start sharing your cultures and stuff. Yeah.
And during those years, did you go back to Uruguay to visit at all?
I didn't go to Uruguay until I was 21. So.
Until you were 21? Okay.
Yeah.
So there was so you're saying from when you moved back at about 9 until 21?
Yeah, I moved back when I was 8. I was selective mute for 10 months and then, 21.
21, that's a big gap.
It was a huge gap. And I've got a brother in Uruguay.
So that's right.
Really big gap. And my nephews, but it was great. When I returned, I didn't want to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And maybe before we get, because that's really interesting to talk about, like your experience when you went back to Uruguay. What role did your mum play in all of this, in shaping your, if we want to call it like identity?
So my parents divorced soon after I came. We came to Australia, and my mum was a single mother, and she was always really hardworking. So she was a cleaner, and she used to take, not only a cleaner, she used to also do mail runs in the mornings, really early in the morning, and sometimes in the afternoons as well. And she would, do everything. She would even like make homemade bread, like torta fritas, pizza. Like she made things from scratch because it was cheaper. Because it's cheaper to buy flour than to actually go and buy you a pizza. And she's like, I make it myself. It's much cheaper. So like my mum, she showed us how to survive with the bare minimum. I still don't understand how she did it. She worked several jobs. She looked after my sister and I. She travelled by bus. She didn't get a car for a really long time. It was so awesome when she finally got a car. But she used to travel by bus and train all the way to Double Bay or whatever, like all these areas to clean houses for all these rich people, and then come back and pick us up from before and after school care, and then continue because you come home and then she had to clean at home and cook and
I feel like that's such an important part of our diaspora, a job that many of us or our our parents or our abuelos have done, which is cleaning.
Yes.
And often not spoken about a lot, how that job is also helped us to set a strong foundation to then get to the next point. So I feel like it's really good to talk about it. It's meaningful work that's helped us to, lo voy a decir en español, like lograr más.
It gave my mum obviously the flexibility as well to study. So she, and like she chose her hours. So she would clean offices at night and she would take us. So we were really annoying, my sister and I. We fought over the vacuum because the cleaner's vacuum, you wear it like a backpack, and we thought it was like the coolest thing ever. My mum would have been like, oh my God, I really just want to go home. But yeah, she was able to study, and she's a bookkeeper. She's been a bookkeeper since probably about my quinces. She started working as a bookkeeper, and she bought her own home. Like we moved a lot. So my mum, she applied for Housing Commission but never got it, and we moved too many times, like more than the years that I had. And then when I was 19, she bought her first house. Like she bought it on her own from working as a cleaner. Like, she saved money and she studied. Like she did so much. Like I don't know how my mum died.
And was your abuela from like your maternal abuela, was she here as well, or is she in Uruguay?
So there was parts that she was here and parts that they weren't. So they came, all my grandparents, the moment my parents divorced, dropped everything and came.
Okay.
Because they wanted to be there for us. But every now and then they'd go back. They're like, oh, things are okay now. And then they'd go back. But yeah, no, they would come back there and back. because, you know, that's the migrant life. Like, you can't, even if you're here, you're always thinking about there. And then when you're there, you've got, like, once you migrate, unless everyone in your family goes back, you're always going to be split. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, the amount of families in our community who are just like torn apart, and that's just it's part of the way that you are a family.
Yeah.
My family included. Like, my mum has, like, this is a whole different story, but just quickly, she's got 6 or 8. This is how much I don't even know, half siblings. So, and she only really built a relationship again when then she was like 50. And they're all in Chile. You just get used to it, where you might have peers where they might have a lot of extended family here and you just don't. And then you make a decision to go back to Uruguay. Yeah. What was that like?
It was actually my maternal grandmother passed. So I went, it was actually 2. So, like, my maternal grandmother had passed, and my paternal grandmother wanted to take my paternal grandfather's ashes to Rivera, because we're from the north of Uruguay, borders with Brazil. And she wanted to take his ashes to El Cerro Chato, which is like an indigenous tradition to go and bury your dead with the rest of the ancestral bones. And so she wanted to do that, and she paid for mine and my sister's ticket. So, but at the same time, so we were doing that for my grandfather, who had passed years behind, and my maternal grandmother had recently passed. So I wanted to be there for both. I wanted to be there for the returning of my grandfather's ashes, and being there for my maternal grandfather, who was there grieving the loss of my maternal grandmother. So yeah, so it was complex, but it was also, I didn't want to come back because I had my brother there. It was beautiful too. There was joy. I was there with my brother. I was there with my nephews, who were so tiny at that point. They were 1, 4 and 6. They were tiny. Like, it was beautiful to finally connect in other ways, because back then there wasn't even, I didn't have a smartphone. I don't know if anyone else did, but in those times I didn't have a smartphone. And the only way I knew of them was when they sent me letters, or they sent me cassettes or videos, and that's the only way I knew of them, and photos. So it was beautiful to finally have a moving image of them right in front of me, like live. I'm like, yeah. So there was sadness, but there was also a lot of joy.
And how long did you stay in Uruguay for?
Then I stayed 1 month, but then I went back when I was 24. Then I saved by myself to go back, and then I fell in love.
Okay, that's right. Special someone. You also started to form a bit of your, like, early working career. Your studies was, where is it here? Communication.
Yes,
is that right?
I did a bachelor's in communication, writing and cultural studies at UTS, and then I did a master's in media arts and production with a sub-major in screenwriting at UTS as well.
Storytelling, communication, media, like that area was always of interest to you?
It was always an interest. I was not good at it. Like, not the storytelling, I was not good at the grammar.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually really good at mathematics and biology. Those were like my top. And my dad wanted me to be an accountant, and I was like, no.
Standard. Like doctor,
yeah,
accountant.
I'm like, no, I want to tell stories. And so it was a big leap of faith to do that, because I knew that my grammar was not great, and I struggled a lot with, like, every time I wanted to tell a story, no matter how many times I edited, there was always an error. And I also have letter positioning dyslexia, which is when anagram words, their letters just move. So, like, an anagram word is like cat and act. They have the same letters, but they can move, and my brain just reads it quickly, and it can sometimes just read cat and sometimes just read act. And then it changes the entire meaning of the sentence. So writing was always hard for me. I had the story in my head. I just had to slowly write it down and, take it very slowly. Like my editing, I had to take it very seriously as well. So, which I guess is a good thing. I had to really pay attention to what I was writing, and a lot of feedback I get from editors is like, oh, the image is very strong. And I'm like, yes, you don't know how long I've been in that image.
And then you went into an interesting path after that. Like, you've been able to win or achieve a lot of awards and accolades off the back of your writing.
After I finished university, there's 2 connections that I made that were essential in my career. So I finished a master's degree in the top 10% of my class, and I still couldn't get a job. They kept saying that I needed experience. And I'm like, how can I have experience? I've got a master's degree in it. Anyway, they wouldn't give me a job. So I was doing experience for free. And then I stumbled across a company called Curious Works. And they're from Western Sydney. And they open the doors to people like myself from Western Sydney that are filmmakers that want to make it into the industry. And they started giving me roles in all their films and paid. And I was like, oh, great. Anyway,
What do you mean all their films, like acting?
No. So at one point I was a camera assistant.
Okay.
Another one I was a data wrangler. Like they just gave me different roles, whatever was available. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Because I just needed the experience. And so that really helped with my CV. And then from there, I started getting into the television industry with paid roles. And I worked on Gogglebox. I worked on at Channel 9 in various departments. Yeah. And I worked on Survivor. I worked on a lot of shows after that because of Curious Works opening those doors for me. And then through Curious Works, because they not only focused on film, they also focused on storytelling. They gave me a small grant for one of my scripts with working title Roots back then. And as I was pitching it in the room, one of the people that I was pitching it to, she goes, "Hey, do you know of Sweatshop Literacy Movement?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Well, you should contact them because they also do what Curious Works does for the film industry, but with writing." And I was like, okay. And so there I submitted my first, it was a short poem and to Sweatshop, and they got back to me and they're like, "Hey, would you like to expand this into a short story and we'll get it published?"
What a good feeling.
Yeah, and the good thing about this short story, which is called Abuela's Mark, which is about the mark that my abuela left on her bed, and she had passed. And so I just, it's very poetic and poignant about just how she may have been gone, but I could see her through the mark, and like all these memories would come up, and just me being in that room with that mark and then laying in my abuela's mark. This short story first was picked up by a publisher that in Romania. Like I was like, what? They published it in Romania. And then they picked it up for the Department of Education and Training. So it's in the stage 4 curriculum, my short story.
Wow.
I'm serious. Since 2020. So I have students studying this short story. It's just like from that, it just opened up so many doors.
Yeah.
These two, Curious Works and Sweatshop Literacy Movement, were like opening doors for people like myself that in other ways we wouldn't get. Like if I wanted to get a job in the television industry without them, what I was doing was just unpaid work constantly. At one point, all I was doing was getting coffee rounds. And I was like, how is this experience? But, you know, that's what they call experience.
And let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned Gogglebox, Survivor and a couple of those shows. But then I know at some point, maybe it's fast forwarding a little bit, but you also worked on Bump, right?
Yes, I'm very active on Instagram. And when I saw that there was going to be a television series with Latino family, I was like, oh my God, finally. Like I was really excited. But at the same time, because I had been in the industry for so long, I'm like, there better be a Latino writer in that room. There better be. And so I posted in the comments, I'm like, hey, I'm so excited about this show. And, you know, given the praise that it deserves and that, you know, representation matters and we can't, we are who we see as well. So like, it's about time that the Latino community can actually see themselves on the screen in a positive way. And so I just outright asked, I'm like, is there a Latino writer in there? And then they contacted me on my DMs and then they invited me into the writer's room. Yeah, because they only had one Latino. Yeah. So.
And who was that other Latino?
Oh God, what was he? I really don't remember his name. I know he was Chilean Italian.
Matias?
No.
Not Matias?
No. Stephen. Yeah, Stephen. I think it was Stephen.
What an honour for you to be able to write for a show, because it's the only show that has that sort of like South American or Latin American representation as a family unit, so more than just one individual person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that they're pioneers in that sense. I actually got to be on the set for their movie.
Yeah.
And I felt honoured that they from a casting point of view, they felt it was really important. I think the greater majority of people were of Latin American heritage, but I would say based on just my interactions, 90% of the cast, if not more.
Oh, yeah, the cast, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was very much an extra. I'm not going to make myself to be the principal lead, but sorry, it was nice to see that even the extras at that level, they felt it was really important to have Latin American heritage, which was nice.
But one thing that I was adamant to teach the people in production was that, yes, you can have on-screen representation, but you need to also have behind-the-scenes representation, especially with the storytelling, because we should be telling our stories. Like nothing about us without us, because we know the details of what it means to be Latin American. Like, for example, when I was in the writer's room and I was there as a cultural advisor and a translator, they just wanted me to, I'm a Uruguayan, right? And they wanted me to translate the Chilean, Argentinian and Colombian. And then I'm like, hey, we have different dialects. I'm like, you're very lucky that I know Chileans and Uruguayans are very close to Argentinians. I go, but we do have different dialects. And so, like, those type of little things only we know, you know? So, and they didn't know that. So, like, it was really important. And then they hired an academic of Latin American studies, which was really important. So, like, I'm really happy that I actually, you know, put my finger in the wound and said, hey, congratulations, but hey, there's still more work to be done. Like, you need to have us in the storytelling room. Like, you can't just write about us without us. Like, you can't.
I remember when we were talking about this months ago, and I actually never, like, for me, someone who consumes a lot of content, like I do create, but certainly not from a writing point of view, and you were telling me about this and I was like, it's such a good point. You often don't realise all the different factors that come into play, even the accent, like, you know, imagine having a Chilean person speak and say "pusho," like what's that saying? Is it the unbeknownst eye? Oh, I don't even know the saying. To someone who doesn't know, they wouldn't know any different. But then if you put it in front of the Latin Australian community, they're like, why is a Chilean saying "pusho"?
Well, I can actually give you an example. So I actually know the people in season 1 who danced in one of the episodes. Is Grupo Montun. Hello. And they were the ones that corrected them and said, hey, this is not a Chilean cueca, this is an Argentinian cueca.
What? Okay, yeah.
And no one else would know that but a Chilean, right? So
I didn't even know Argentina had a cueca.
There you go. See?
What?
They do. And so that's why, it's so important for us to tell our stories. You focus on your stories, which is great because half of the cast, there's a white family, but then there's the Latino family, and we're from that family is Chilean, Argentinian, Colombian, and then second generation as well. So, like, you need to have diversity of Latinos behind the scenes to ensure that our representation is correct because, you know, it's important. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, I really sense this fire and drive within you to share story authentically, which is very evident. And then you went back to Uruguay.
Yeah.
And you met a special someone.
Yes.
What was that all about?
So I went back. So after 2021, after when I went when I was 21, I went back when I was 24. And I went with a group of 11 of my friends. We were supposedly going to travel all of Latin America. But as soon as I'm a very emotional person. So as soon as I got to Uruguay and I saw my nephews who had grown so much in that little bit of time, I just couldn't. I couldn't leave Uruguay. So I stayed with them. And so my friends were all having the time of their lives, going to Machu Picchu, going to Cuba, I was so jealous. But at the same time, I was like, hey, I've got my nephews. They're fighting over space of my tummy. Like, they would put their little hands on my tummy when they would go to sleep. They were so cute. So, like, you can't replace that. I was like, no, I just can't. But what I did do, my brother would be like, okay, you've been all day inside the house with your nephews, go out. And so I would go out dancing. And I one day went out dancing and I met who's now my husband. He asked me to dance a plena. And from there, like, we've never been apart, basically. I ended up staying in Uruguay, living there. Yeah.
I would say he would play such an important role in helping you stay connected to Uruguay as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not only in Uruguay, but also with the working class Uruguayan. Because
why do you make that distinction?
They're different. It's just the same as here. He's from the same. It's so funny how we met. But anyway, so he's from the same suburbs that my parents are from. So my mum's from Maroñas, which is like a working class suburb, right? And then my father's from El Cerro. And my husband's he's from those areas. And the language that we speak is different. So there's just a difference. It's like we have the Westie twang. We have those twangs from those areas. So he helped me connect to that part of Uruguay and not just go there as a tourist and speak the Montevideo or the tourist Uruguayan. So that's so important with storytelling as well, because if not, I wouldn't be telling the story that I am. In my novel, I have that juxtaposition. I have the working class woman in Western Sydney and I have the working class woman in El Cerro, which is actually Western Montevideo. So I did that on purpose. It was intentional. So, and it was like that comparison of like, hey, we both work hard. You know, it doesn't matter if you're in a first world country or a third world country, you're still a working class woman no matter where you are. And so like it was really important actually that I met him, because that gave the details to my novel even more detail. Like I was like, hey, we use this word, we don't use that word. Oh yeah, like just living in the area. Well,
that's the other thing I wanted to ask you. So I recall we were talking about how you had an experience living, and it's actually a very similar experience when I went to Argentina once, and I stayed, I think, about a month in un pueblecito, and where it's, I think it's multi-generational, or different members of different families of one greater family live together. And you were talking about you had a similar experience, right?
Yeah, so when I lived in Uruguay, when I met my husband and then decided to stay, the first thing he did was build a house for me and him on his grandfather's piece of land. So his grandfather had bought a big piece of land and it had been divided between all his 6 kids. And then the grandkids also took part of the land. And my husband had a little piece of land and he made basically like what you would call here a studio. He made a little studio home and we lived there together, all of us in that piece of land. I would go out to hang the clothes and I would have like his uncle, his other uncle, or his nieces would come and like hang out with me all day, like the 4-year-olds, and like tell me how to cook. Why don't you have a microwave? She would say all the time. And I'm like, I don't have a space for the microwave. It's so cute.
I feel that's very Latin American. Like that's very much my experience as well when I went to Argentina, but also different parts of my family in Chile as well. Like they have that. And it kind of makes sense. Like if you've ever seen on Amiga Mía where I post those memes about family fighting over terrenos.
Oh, yeah.
It's because it makes sense over there. Abuelos would buy land and then it'll be divided, and then it's like the generation maybe that moves away, they go back because a couple of generations have passed away. And it's like, how do you manage that?
Yeah.
And so I find a lot of those memes. It took me a while to understand them once I went back and I realised the living situations.
The funniest moment for me, because whilst we were in Uruguay, we had been there for 10 months and we decided to apply for a visa to come to Australia. And the Australian immigration did not understand where I was living, because all the people that were testigos for our relationship had the same address as us, and there were so many. And they're like, so you live in a private villa? And we were like, yeah, call it that, whatever. A private villa in the ghettos, yes. That's what it is.
Love it. So this has really helped. So you've got quite a wholesome perspective and lived experience in Australia, Western Sydney, and then in Uruguay, El Cerro. Would you say El Cerro is probably where you spent the most amount of time when you were there, around 24?
I spent, I think, equal times in Piedras Blancas, which is right next to Maroñas, which is where my mother's from, and El Cerro.
And El Cerro, yeah. I recall one photo in your novel, which was, actually, I don't know if it was from your novel, but you sent it to me, of La Farmacia.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Is that an important place?
Yeah, so whilst I was in El Cerro, living with my brother and my nephews, there was one day, because I had never experienced anything adverse in the area. Yes, people were working class and, struggled to make ends meet, but they did it, like in community. If someone didn't have food today, the neighbour will give them a plate or whatever. One day we hear gunshots, and it was the first time that I had experienced that. And a 13-year-old had shot the pharmacist in the stomach. She survived. Obviously a drug addict to steal all the medication, Yeah, so that was a moment that was hard, and most of the people knew who he was, but most of us didn't want to say anything because, one, there's fear that there would be retaliation if you spoke up, and two, you're like, what's the life of a 13? Like, what are they going to do to him? You're just like, is he going to get better if they put him in jail? Usually they don't get better. And the community ended up taking care. So, like, there was a couple of elder men that went and they spoke to the family. They're like, this is what your son did. And, like, they spoke in private. And, yeah, and we hope that made a difference in his life. Yeah, but the pharmacist she was a hero. Like, she stayed there. She didn't leave. She kept on going, and she served the boy. The boy was around. Like, he's a boy. After all, he's a child. Yeah, a child that was forgotten by the state.
You know, probably one of many stories, many stories. And I feel like that's the other part when you travel. Certainly when I speak to people in our community, when they travel growing up majority of their life in Australia, and then you go back to Latam, it's something that can be seen as or felt as very confrontational because you're just not accustomed to it.
Yeah.
But it is very much part of the story and its reality.
Yeah.
So coming back to Australia, you're with your husband now, and all of a sudden you decided just to make a big change. What was that all about?
So I got into the film and television industry, but they always put me in admin roles. So unlike curious work, which gave me opportunities to be a camera assistant or a data wrangler or something else, like once I got into Endemol Shine and Channel 9 and Beyond Productions and all Roadshow, like so many, they always gave me admin roles, either like data entry, transcription, so post-production where I just had to check everything before it went to air. And I was just over that because I was working long hours, completely underpaid, completely overworked. I actually earned more I worked 15 years in the customer service industry. I earned more as a call center representative. And I was like, I'm done. They wouldn't treat you right. Like, a lot of the time I had someone point their finger in my face, like as if they were a teacher or something, or my mother, I don't know. And I'm like, this is not healthy. And it wasn't their fault either. They are overworked as well, you know. So, like, I do have that type of understanding and empathy with people. So I know, and I was like, no, this is not healthy. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I just left, and I just decided to take a risk and just stick to my novel. So I hope it pays off.
I want to read a quote that you said, just to kick off, I guess, a bit about the novel. Now we have a good amount of context of your backstory, which is, I'm a product of colonisation and immigration. My tongue's heavy with language stolen, blended and conquered. And Hailstones Fell Without Rain is my mother tongue, decolonised and speaking back. I found that to be very powerful, very, very powerful. So I just kind of wanted to, with that, lead into the next question, which is like, what was the inspiration behind the novel?
So I had many inspirations. One of them was my abuelo Napo, who's Afro-Indigenous from El Cerro Chato in Rivera. Also my grandmother too, his wife. They're both from the same area. And I wanted to speak to especially Uruguayans who have this idea that being of European heritage is better than of being white is better, like white passing, to remind them of our history, that to move forward, you need to remember. You can't forget what happened to move forward and make a better world. So for grandparents to survive, they had to survive all of that. So in Uruguay, the Spaniards first arrived 1516, and from then on, not just Charrua, but like all the tribes, indigenous tribes, either resisted or integrated within 300 years. So it was 300 years of resistance and integration, right? So in 300 years, that means a lot of these Uruguayans that think they're just European, I'm sorry to tell you, but most likely you're not. And then in 1831 was the last massacre, and it was called the Massacre of Sal Si Puedes, which was a call from the recently founded president there, Fructuoso Rivera. Where my grandparents are from is named after, is a homage to this guy that did a massacre of my people. So and it's called Sal Si Puedes for a reason. He said, Sal Si Puedes, leave if you can, because basically he was going to kill all the men and boys over 12, incarcerate the women and the children, and separate them and put them into house servitude, right? And so that's what happened. So each of these families that say they're just European, most likely you had a house servant that was Indigenous, and most likely something happened in between there, because a lot of us are still here. And I'm not just saying that because of my own family. It's actually a study that they've been doing in Uruguay. So there's a biologist called Mónica Sanz, and she's been doing a study with the Universidad de la República in Uruguay. And she's been trying to investigate how much of the population of Uruguay has Indigenous blood. And she has discovered that in totality, so far, in totality, 1/3 of Uruguayans have Indigenous blood. But from the north, it's as high as 64%.
Interesting.
It's really high.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's in the north, like all the country towns up north, closer to Brazil. Yeah, so that was really important for me to unravel in my novel. So there's a character called Nacho, which is inspired by my abuelo Napo, and he tells that story. And then I also wanted to speak to what happened during the dictatorship. But I also wanted to say that it started before. Like, if we always are told, oh yeah, the dictatorship of Uruguay, 1973 to 1985. But no, it started before. Like, they started implementing laws to stop people from peaceful protesting, which is what's happening here too, or trying to. So that's what's happening in Uruguay before the dictatorship started. And my uncle was part of one of the protests, and his friend got shot. Like, he survived, luckily, but he got shot in a peaceful protest. And they were students. They were high school students at the time. They were 16, 17 years old. And so this happened before the dictatorship officially started. So I wanted to speak to that. And then I also, because I interviewed so many people, and of course, Uruguayans, I'm asking them questions about the dictatorship, and then I'm like, tell me your stories. Like, open up to me, tell me, and I'll record them, and then I'll try to fictionalize them and stay true to your story. And they all tell me that about the meat ban.
About the what?
The meat ban. So there was a time where they would ban a certain amount of meat there was a certain amount of meat that Uruguayans could buy, especially during 1972, 1973. There was a meat ban. So it was 3 kilos for the entire month or whatever. And it was not enough for Uruguayans.
What?
And so who cares about the military that's going down the street and, and interrupting peaceful protests and arresting people? I care about the meat ban. A lot of them were talking about the meat ban. So I had to incorporate that into my novel because meat is so important to Uruguayans.
I was going to say, similar to the Argentinians, un asado for Uruguayos is the biggest thing ever, right?
You can't take it away. So they were all talking to me about that, and they were really funny stories. So one of them, because the meat ban was especially in Montevideo, which was the most socialist of the states in Uruguay. And so it's kind of like they did it on purpose, we're going to give them a meat ban. So a lot of them would have to go to the country or cross over into another state to acquire meat, but then to bring it into Montevideo, they would hide it. And because the women, especially young girls, wouldn't get searched, a lot of the girls that were 12 or whatever would put meat under their skirts just to bring the meat into Montevideo. I heard all these stories. Another one that I heard was that they paid an ambulance to bring in a dead cow into Montevideo. And I was like, oh my God, Uruguayans are creative. All this for me.
Everything for an asado.
So, and then another one that I heard was they would ask the people from Tacuarembó, Rivera, whatever, to post out meat, and they would post it in the post. I'm like, what?
That is next level.
And they're like, they would post it in the morning and it would come in the afternoon. Because it takes 8 hours for the meat to arrive, and they're sometimes it would be off by the time it would come.
Oh my God!
But it was worth the risk.
Question: was there an actual shortage of meat though?
Yes, so they were selling the meat. The government was selling the meat,
as in exporting
all the meat, and only giving a certain amount to Uruguayans to make money.
I also like the fact that you interviewed people. Would you say, for someone like myself who's not an author or haven't worked in that field, is that common to have interviews to get more knowledge and context for a book?
For me, because of what I was writing, is essential because I wanted to stay true to the story because it is semi-autobiographical fiction. So I utilised people's stories and then I just kind of like weaved in my experience, right, into the story. So like if someone would tell me the story about the meat ban, which I didn't experience because I wasn't alive, for example, it might be two sisters crossing over to get the meat, but then I would add my relationship with my sister as the characters, right? Because I know that relationship. So that's the semi-autobiographical part. So like I fictionalized because I got this story of the like how they would acquire the meat, but then who are the characters? The characters are me and my sister or whatever, you know, and then
That's beautiful that you were able to capture their stories and honour it.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful to everyone who opened up to me. As I was interviewing them, I was grieving with them because I was like, oh my God, you lived all this and you carried all this with you all this time and far out. You don't even seem like you lived this. Like I was very touched at how strong our community is. We're very strong. So, and then they were so like willing to, like they were like, yeah, no, it's okay. You do what you want with it. Like they were happy for me to fictionalize it, include it or not include it. Like, because I said, you know, I'm not going to include every single story, but if I do, I'm going to make a reference to you. I do have a reference page in my novel.
And going back to the dictatorship, how are you able to balance the personal and political elements?
So I'm a very, for me, politics is a part of life. Whether you decide to be apolitical, you're still being political because that's a choice. You can choose not to see and not to say something. And for me, politics is everywhere. The same with my family. So I just was inspired mostly by myself and then from examples that I had, which growing up, which was Mariana Mingus, which was my mum's best friend, Chilean. She was a political prisoner in Chile and she was arrested when she was 4 months and a half pregnant and she gave birth incarcerated. They forced her into a C-section. So in my novel, I wanted to honour that strength of women who are not afraid to speak up, no matter the consequences, because they know it's the right thing to do. They know that if we don't speak up, then they take away everyone's rights. And then it's just going to get worse and worse. I wanted to honour that, especially Mariana Mingus, who for me taught me so much in my life. Like I am who I am because of her.
Is it fair to say that migration and identity, it's like two really core themes that you talk throughout the novel?
Yes, yeah. Because migration affects your identity. All of it affects your identity. Being part of the history of our countries just affects your identity. Just knowing that our people went through what they went through because of a US-backed dictatorship. Like all of Latin America was backed by the US. And knowing our country's history of colonization, that all affects our identity. It just shows all that our ancestors have endured for us to be here. And then now we're in another country and we're carrying these stories. In Spanish, the word history and story is the same, historia. So we carry that history and that story with us wherever we go.
And you do it beautifully because you kind of weave in or intertwine 3 generations, which is a huge part of a lot of people's story in our Latin diaspora, because whether like we have abuelas still in Latin America or they were the ones who kicked off the migration, and then it could be like our parents and then us. I have a quick question actually before we go into that point. I think I'd really value your opinion. So you're born in Australia, right? Do you consider yourself first generation or second generation?
First.
Why?
Because I spoke Spanish first.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. It's really complex because I know I was born here. So, yeah, but
But first generation, and then what would you put after that?
I guess I'm 1.5.
But I mean more so like people who ask me, not necessarily in the Latin community in Australia, but they just ask like what are you, which is a very open-ended question. And often I struggle between I'm first generation Australian. People say that you're also second generation migrant. Like there's so many different ones, and sometimes I'll post that I'm proudly first generation Australian with Latin heritage, and people are like, no, you're not, you're second generation because you were born here.
Yeah.
you're not the first generation to migrate. And I was like, yeah, but I'm saying I'm the first generation to be born in Australia. And so it's just so complex. So I was just interested in...
One very insightful thing that my 6-year-old said to me once, she said, Mama, are we in Uruguay? And I said, no, mi amor, we're not. We're in Australia, we're in Fairfield. And she's like, but why do we speak Uruguay? Why do we eat Uruguay? Why do we listen Uruguay? Like, she was like, our house is Uruguay. And that's why I feel like I'm Uruguayan first, because my house will never be the same as a person who is monolingual, who has no other culture but the Australian, whatever that is. So if a white Australian comes into my home, they will feel like the difference. They will say, okay, this is not like my house. This is a different house. In my house, we speak Spanish, and Spanglish. We watch a lot of YouTubers from Uruguay. We listen, like, our music is always in Spanish.
That's right. What is that song that you sent me now? I played it like on repeat for days. Yeah.
I've never had, what is it, one of the traditional Australian meals, like the roast Sundays. I've never had a roast Sunday. For me, on Sundays we eat, if it's something special, it's usually an asal or whatever.
And then going back to how the novel spans across 2 continents, and you've done a beautiful job in being able to capture 3 generations. Why was that so important for you?
There's several reasons. So one of the reasons, each character for me represents a different ancestor. So I made it on purpose. I chose on purpose to have visibly different characters from the same family, to say we are all the same blood. So I had a visibly Afro-Uruguayan, a visibly Indigenous Uruguayan, and a visibly white-passing Uruguayan. And they were all from the same family, because that was my point. My point was like, this is Uruguay. This is our history. Get over it. This is what we are. The other reason, I wanted to show what a new Uruguayan, a more modern Uruguayan can be like, as opposed to someone who might be a little bit more closed-minded. Like, I wanted to show the difference. And then also wanted to break stereotypes. And I made the oldest character very progressive, which is very true to me from my grandmother. My maternal grandmother was like really progressive. So I just really wanted to highlight the difference in our community, but also where we're the same. Because I really hated that both my husband and my husband's visibly black, I'm visibly white, and we both get asked where we're from all the time. And when we tell them we're Uruguayan, they're like, oh, you don't look Uruguayan. I'm like, what is that? I am Uruguayan. That's how we are.
I find that very common in Australia, certainly with the Latin community. How can you pinpoint? I never, ever, ever, ever get Chilean, ever. I always get Brazilian, which I'm happy because Brazilians are beautiful people. But going back to the 3 different people in the novel, what are the names of the characters in the novel?
So we start off with Graciela. This is another choice that I made. All my characters are known by their nicknames. She's Grachu. I described, like, part 1, Graciela Maria, Graciela Maria Ferreira Vargas. So that's her name. And then I put Grachu. And then throughout the part 1, we just refer to her as Grachu. And it's told through third person. So that was really important. So I have like a narrator that connects all the 3. So we can get into the minds of each character, like a godly character that's describing the world around them. And the part 2 is through Estela Maria Vargas. I'm going to forget the other surname that she has. But anyway, but we know her as Chula because she was always beautiful. So she got her nickname because she was, Chula. And she's the great aunt of Grachu. And then the last one is Silvia Margarita Labor de Ferreira, and she is known as Rita, which is, I even played more with it because it's Rita from Margarita, which is her second name, and it's the ending. In Latin America, it's very common to not even use your name.
I was going to say, it's very, very like Latin to use nicknames, isn't it?
Yeah. So one of the characters, they call her Tata, And the reason is because her name's Catalina, and she era tartamuda, and when she would say her name, she would say Catalina, and so they would call her Tata, which is something that in other cultures are like, oh, you can't do that, but they do that in Latin America. They do that, like they'll like something that is taboo. You're not meant to call someone gordo, but how many people are nicknamed gordo in Latin America? It's just how we are.
It's like for me, I grew up just accepting that I was called like viejita.
Yeah.
And that's because they always said that I was I acted a lot older than my age. And I remember when I told someone about it, they're like, oh, that's so mean. Why would your parents say that to you? And it's like, I never took it in a mean way. Why was it important for you to have those three characters as women?
Oh, that's the other thing, because women are, in Charrua culture, women are the ones who carry our stories and our histories, our historias, and they're the ones who pass on the legacy. I just wanted to keep that beautiful culture alive through telling the stories through the woman's point of view.
The last question before we get into more of like a wrap up would be, what do you hope readers will walk away with once they read Hailstones Fell Without Rain?
The power they have within them. Often a lot of people say, what can I do? I'm just one person. One person can make a big change. That's one big thing that I hope they take away, because lots of one people resisted against the military dictatorship in Uruguay, and they won. The coup ended. And it's thanks to all these people that, yes, many disappeared, many were incarcerated. I think it was 1 in 50 that were incarcerated in Uruguay during the dictatorship. But because of them speaking up, because of them resisting, all these ones that, what can I do? Well, they ended the dictatorship. It's thanks to them.
Beautiful and powerful words. And when your book is going to be it's going to be available to purchase on the 5th of August, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And if someone wants to pre-order it now, because it's available currently for pre-order, where's the best place that they can go to do that?
So they can go to the UQP page, or they can go to my Instagram, and the link is in my bio, or they can go to your Instagram, and they can just pre-order there. And, of course, if you are not financially capable, please go to your library and request that they order 2 copies, because that will really help, and you can read it for free.
So I'll put all the information on the show notes if you want to find out more. And then, of course, the big day. I remember the other day you called it your birthday, book birthday.
Yeah, my book birthday.
Your book birthday on the 5th of August. All right. And before I guess we say goodbye, something completely just left field would be, what's your favourite Uruguayan phrase? Like, you just can't say it in English. It doesn't sound right. But you say it in Spanish, but it's got a Uruguayan twist to it.
Yeah, so my novel is actually titled Hailstones Fell Without Rain, which is an interpretation of the idiom, the Uruguayan idiom, cayó piedra sin llover, which is something that we say when something unexpected occurs, someone unexpected comes, or something unexpected occurs. And in my novel, and all the different parts in the novel with the different characters, something unexpected happens. Just be aware.
What was that one more time?
Cayó piedra sin llover.
Love it. I'm so excited to continue to follow your journey with this new novel, your debut novel. And I'm also really honoured that you even thought of me to be part of this with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I wouldn't have thought of anyone else. Seriously. I love the work that you do. I feel like I know more of the Latin American diaspora because of you. Like, I wouldn't know so many talented Latinos that we have out there. It's all because of you, because you're connecting us. And it's so important, because for a really long time we felt so alone. Like, we feel like, where are we? Like, you see the Lebanese community, you see the Vietnamese community, like, you see them together. Why aren't we together? We're a huge community. We should be together. So I thank you for that, because you're creating a legacy for us.
Appreciate it. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you so much.